Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Aleppo in Syria. And this is a very exciting place to talk about because Aleppo, the city of Aleppo, is believed to be the oldest inhabited place on Earth. There's no proof that, we can't tell exactly how old or how long ago, I should say, the city was started. But it's believed to be the oldest still inhabited place on Earth. How neat is that? Also, just a little fun fact, because I couldn't find a place to put it into the history, but it's believed that soap was invented in Aleppo. Yes, soap. Like what you wash your body with. Soap was invented in Aleppo. Like, that's how old it is. Like, basic things that you don't even think about. How old is this invention? Were invented here. But we're going to talk about the governorate of Aleppo first. It's this whole area here. And to be honest, there's not much going on out here. It's all kind of happening right here. So it is important to note that the Euphrates River flows through here, and part of Lake Assad is within the Aleppo governorate. The rest of the area is pretty much just towns and farmland. Syria is very noted for the Syrian desert, and this is pretty much where the Syrian desert meets the Mediterranean coast. Pretty much once you hit Aleppo and you start heading out this way, you're in the desert. So this area is quite, not what you think of farmland, like lush green rolling hills. It's very flat and rocky, but people have been farming this area since farms were invented. There's some really neat old abandoned towns all throughout this area from all different parts of history. One of them is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but most of the villages are in the Idlib province over here, so I'm actually not going to talk about that one. But I am going to talk about the UNESCO World Heritage Site in the city of Aleppo. And I'm going to pull out my tablet now to show you, because it is a very fascinating place. The ancient city of Aleppo. Let's read about it first before I show you the pictures. Located at the crossroads of several trade routes from the 2nd millennium BCE, Aleppo was ruled successively by the Hittites, Assyrians, Arabs, Mongols, Mamluks, and Ottomans. We'll go more in depth with that. The 13th century citadel, 12th century Great Mosque, and various 17th century madrasas, palaces, caravanserais, and hammams all form part of the city's cohesive, unique urban fabric, now threatened by overpopulation. If you don't know, a madrasa is an Islamic school. A caravanserai is a place where caravan traders would rest for the night. And a hammam is like a Turkish bath. It's a public bath. But here you can see a good picture of the entryway into the old city of Aleppo. And we're definitely going to take a look at it on Google Earth. But let's take a look at the slideshow here. You can see lots of the interior shots of the old fortress area. It's kind of like the main thing to see when you go and visit it as a tourist. You look at the fortress, there's a big moat around it. The view of Aleppo from up high, because it's on this huge mound. I'll show you on Google Earth just how big it is. But it was a little functional town on top of this big hill in the middle of Aleppo. Big mosque there. Looks like the souk right there. Here's a good picture. You can see just how high this mound is. Oh my goodness, I clicked on it. Just how high this mound is. I guess it's a good time to put this away. Very cool site. And I'm starting off with the old city of Aleppo because that mound is where we begin our story and history. As you can see here on the map, in Arabic, the city isn't nearly called Aleppo, it's called Khalab. Khalab. It's really fun to say, very tinkly. Aleppo is kind of the Greek twisted version of that name. Like when you sit and think about it, it's like Aleppo, Aleppo. Okay, sure. Thanks, Alexander. But this name actually has mysterious origins. We're not quite sure how it got there. That's how old this city is. So that mound that the citadel of Aleppo, the old city of Aleppo, is currently located on, was a mound that was first used probably in the 18th century BCE. We'll never know for sure. There's not a lot of archaeology happening in Aleppo for various reasons. We'll get into it. But we may never know just how old that area is. So way, way back, the 18th century BCE, it was part of the Amorite kingdom, and they worshipped a god known as Hadad. I'm reading the town. Hadad. And it's believed that somehow Hadad turned into Khalab over time. It was the storm god, and they would worship at this temple on top of this mound. And we know this because we found a tablet from when it was called Ebla. It used to be called Yamhad. Later it was controlled by, I guess, the people who called it Ebla. We found a tablet in the citadel from the 3rd millennium BCE that talks about the storm god and how he was worshipped up there. That's the only way we really know about that. Otherwise, the name Khalab is technically a mystery. How cool is that? It's so old that the name meaning is lost, but I bet you anything it comes from that god, right? Some way or another. So, this area being very, very old and inhabited for so long, many people have come through, conquering, reconquering, so on and so forth. So it's one of those places where I can either give you a 2-hour breakdown of the complete history of Aleppo, which I know some of you want, but let's be realistic. I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes versions of the peoples that came through this area. So like I said, it was originally an Amorite kingdom. It was eventually conquered by the Hittites, then the Egyptians down here, then the Mitanni from over here, and the Mitanni and Hittites kind of went back and forth in this area, conquering and reconquering until the Assyrians came to power from down here, further down Mesopotamia, conquering as they went all through the valley here of the Tigris and Euphrates. Eventually, they were conquered by Babylon, and eventually Babylon was conquered by the Achaemenid Persians. So, that was a quick Cliff Notes version. But it's not over yet, because Alexander the Great from Macedon, way over there, would conquer the Achaemenid Persians. And when he died, his huge conquered empire was split up between various generals of his. And the general that took over this area was the beginning of the Seleucid dynasty. So these Seleucids soon took over. and his generals being technically like Greek, like they're Macedonian, right? But Greek culture, Hellenistic culture, renamed the city to Beroia and started building lots of Greek buildings and bringing Greek culture into the region. And that would eventually be absorbed by the Romans, who just kind of let it be for a bit. But did a couple things. One, they renamed this area to Syria. This was the province of Syria. And two, the Roman Empire turned into the Byzantine Empire, which became a Christian empire. So many Christians, and at this time Jewish people as well, began to move into the area, building churches and little Christian villages. And the site that I'm not going to show you on UNESCO is out here in the middle of nowhere, and it's an old abandoned Christian village, which is pretty cool, but there's no pictures or anything on UNESCO of that particular one, so I'm not going to bother showing you. There is quite a bit of tension between the Christians and Jews in the area, quite a bit of conflicts, but doesn't really hold a candle to what's about to happen. So, just to note that. The Persian Sassanids conquered, the Byzantines reconquered. It went back and forth for quite a while. It was held by the Byzantines the longest. But that all changed in the year 637 when the Arabs invaded from the peninsula down here, bringing Islam with them. And to this day, there is a kind of peace between the Muslims and Christians in Aleppo. They coexist, probably at this point in 2023, more peacefully than ever. But there has always been a Christian presence here in Aleppo, despite the Arab invasion, bringing their religion and building all the mosques and all of that fantastic architecture of this Arab Muslim time. But there were some roadblocks. One was that the Byzantines would reconquer and the Arabs would have to keep retaking it. It went back and forth for a bit. There was a huge earthquake in 1138, and obviously we don't have a lot of evidence as to just how big that earthquake was, but it quite devastated the city. And then the Crusades arrived in Aleppo in the year 1124. The Christian armies taking over, but not long after that, the armies of Saladin would take it back. And the Ayyubid dynasty, Sultanate, Caliphate, the Ayyubids took over. And this is the time when it was probably at its most prosperous, building the gorgeous Arab architecture and making it a place of learning and luxury, and just making it a very pleasant place to live. And this is when the citadel really became prominent, definitely during the Crusades times. You know, it was sort of around then, but it's when that area on top of the mount started to become a bustling, busy area. But that was not to last. In 1260, the Mongols came through and conquered. The people who were actually paid, I believe, by one of the sultanates in the area, the Mamluks, came up from Egypt to fight and kick out the Mongols. And they went back and forth between the Mamluks and the Mongols. Kind of came to a head in the year 1400 when Tamerlane himself, or Timur, razed the city, pretty much destroyed it. The citadel has remained as it has been. As you saw in the pictures, it's ancient. But pretty much everything else around it was completely destroyed by Tamerlane and the Mongols. But the Mamluks would begin to rebuild it, and eventually it was absorbed into the Ottoman Empire in the year 1516, when the Ottomans absorbed the Mamluks. this is when Aleppo would enter kind of a newish, not golden age, but a prosperous age. Because the Ottomans saw this as a very important little trading area just between their empire, the Arab world, the Levant, Mediterranean, and thus Europe. There was a place where kind of all of these cultures could get together and trade and build trade networks here, especially in silk. That was the biggest commodity, I suppose. Aleppo was home to the world's largest souk, which is a marketplace in the world. I'll talk a little bit about it later, how it is today, but it was hopping, you guys. It was a busy place of trade, especially with Europe. And that lasted until two things happened. One, the price of silk dropped. I think this is when probably silk just wasn't really just as in fashion, and people figured out the secrets on how to make it. You gotta get it from worms, you know. So the price of silk dropped drastically, and also the Suez Canal opened just down, I can't point, down there. So this was now very much out of the way in terms of trade, like way out of the way. So the economy of Aleppo vastly declined in this time period. And it would remain kind of downward until after World War I. The Ottomans were no more, and the French established their mandate on Syria. Aleppo had been the capital beforehand. The French moved it down to Damascus. The people here weren't happy about that, and their logic behind it was that Damascus was going to be the political center and Aleppo was going to be the economic center. So industrialization boomed in Aleppo during this time. But that doesn't mean the people were very happy about it. These Syrian people were very, very anti-French and were quite resentful on how the French just completely restructured their country. And that would rise up again long after the French left and when Syria was independent, when the Alawite, or part of the Ba'ath party, started to rise up in Syria and gain political power. The majority of Muslims, and I don't know all of Syria, but definitely in this area, are Sunni Muslims. The Alawites were Shia Muslims, like a big minority in Aleppo. So the people here what was I saying? The people here weren't happy about the rise of the Assad regime, kind of pushing, my goodness, I gotta slow down, pushing Shia interests into the political sphere. And there were many protests and many, what I'm gonna call, for the sake of monetization, bad people bombings. Bad people, doing big bad attacks. You know what I mean? And that really came to a head in about 1979 when there were massive protests in Aleppo that ended very violently. I feel like that kind of anger of like, please stop controlling us, really started to come to a head during the French. Oh my goodness, what am I saying? The French Mandate era. This area had been pushed around by so many outside powers and invaders since the dawn of time. I feel like that was like the breaking point for the French coming in. So when Syria is finally independent and there's yet another power coming in telling the people of Aleppo what to do and how to be, that was a big no. And that reached its climax in 2012. So 2011 was the Arab Spring protests, where all throughout the Arab world people were protesting against various regimes that they felt were corrupt or unfair in their countries. And in Aleppo, there were protests during 2011, but in 2012, it turned very violent, especially after there was lots of bad people bombings in Aleppo. The Syrian government came in to fight forces that were anti-Syrian government. The Battle of Aleppo began and pretty much lasted until 2016. Aleppo wasn't destroyed, but it was very ruined. It definitely saw some of the worst destruction in the Syrian civil war. And the city's still being rebuilt today. The Assad government won out in Aleppo. Pretty much the Assad government won in the civil war in general, but it's technically not quite over. There's still a lot of unrest in little pockets here and there around Syria. I read that the last rebels were caught and arrested in Aleppo in 2020. So right now Aleppo is going through their rebuilding phase, where many beautiful old buildings were destroyed, including that huge beautiful souk. It's still not completely reopened. It's trying to, but it's an ongoing process. There is a lot to rebuild all throughout Syria, many parts of Syria. But Aleppo today is, like I said, probably as peaceful as it has been in quite a long time. It's much quieter now. It's pretty safe. Like, it's still like on like the red zone, like don't travel here, but it seems very safe, very accepting of tourists, and the tourist industry, I think, is one of the big successful industries in Aleppo right now. Now that everything's slowly starting to be rebuilt, not just in terms of buildings, but the people's mindset and confidence in themselves and the city and the government. And hopefully it just keeps going up. It really seems that Aleppo has the same patterns happening, that someone comes in, tells them what to do, city's destroyed, but then the city gets rebuilt and it enters this very prosperous time until it all happens again like 300 years later. So hopefully Aleppo will begin to enter that prosperous time again, because Aleppo is such a beautiful, beautiful city. And I'm going to show you now on Google Earth. Let me grab this and get rid of UNESCO. Pull up Google Earth. Okay. So, first of all, let's zoom out so you can see exactly where we are in the world. So we are right in the Middle East here. There's Syria, the Mediterranean, Levant coast there. Turkey just borders Aleppo to the north here. Actually, I left this out of the cliff notes, but the Aleppo governorate was largely in what's now Turkey. The Ottomans gobbled up what they could. Well, not the Ottomans. I think the Turks, after the revolution in Turkey, took what they could before the French could. So apparently Aleppo governorate is much smaller than it used to be. You can see the big dam here, Lake Assad, the mighty powerful Euphrates River, and as you can see, this landscape, like I said, is not very lush and green from above, right? Let's zoom into a random spot. You can see the farmland, right? Like, I really don't have anything to show you outside of Aleppo because it's just this really neat landscape. It kind of looks like a brain. But there's not much to actually show you. It's all really cool farmland, though. Big marshy area here. But, yeah, it's very rocky with farms interspersed. These cool valleys are neat, too. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of a Who was it? It was further south in Syria, or looked even more like a brain. Syrian landscape is fascinating. But we're going to take a look at the city of Aleppo. We're going to zoom in here to show you the citadel. You can see it right here. And let me turn on 3D so you can really see just how big this hill is. How neat is that? So this is where you enter the old city, the old fortress there, and the very old mosques and hammams and things like it talked about on UNESCO, all up here. So fascinating. It is so neat. Let's see if we can look at some pictures. If I recall, when I was exploring here, there weren't very many good pictures of the citadel on Google Earth. Let's see what we've got here. Yeah, that's not very exciting, is it? Pretty cool though. A little shrine there of some kind. So yeah, it's up here. They found that old tablet. Like you can see, this is some kind of old amphitheater. There's a mosque up here. Let's see if there's any good pictures of that. Look at this. Oh my goodness, is that not gorgeous? Big domes there. I think those are hammams. View of the city today. And I also hesitate to show you pictures of Syria today because that's what most of the pictures look like. I'm sure that it's much better today, or maybe this is the same. I don't know. So I don't really want to show you pictures around Aleppo because I don't know if it still looks like that. Like you can see the worn out, like I'm sure that's just chipped with time, but how much of that is bullets from the recent conflict? How much of it is just attacks from like the Mongols or the Crusaders, you know? How fascinating. Oh, beautiful ceiling there. That must be in the mosque. The big lanterns there. These old stones. Pretty green. Oh, that's very vibrant. Big entryway there. Beautiful stairs. Looks like a rainy day. The entryway up here. Very fascinating place. And yeah, you can go up in here and explore it today. There's the big, you can see the moat down here. I'm sure it was once filled with water to keep out invaders. There's a little miniature version you can explore. How fun. Very cute. So yes, that is the citadel. Just kind of stands out, doesn't it? Let me see. Did I remember if I looked at this slideshow? I don't think I did. Maybe I did. Oh, I did. I definitely did. I remember this entryway. There is a time in Mesopotamian history where they were really into eyes. Like, they loved eyes. Everything was emphasized on the eyes. It's these huge eyes. And I remember that there's lots of cool, there's a big stela here. That's neat. Just lots of eyes. Oh, that's neat. So cool. All these old artifacts. You can see cuneiform, their old writing, used for keeping records of sales and things. Can we see what this says? God El on his throne and King of Ugarit in front of him from Rosh Sharma. Look at that. Incredible. Great beard. The Mesopotamians really knew how to grow their beards, right? Especially the Assyrians. Beautiful garden outside. Old stonework. This looks a little bit more like recent, you know. Like, man, they were really into eyes. Do you see them? They loved eyes. I mean, eyes are the windows to the soul, I suppose, but there is a period of time where they were just really emphasized the eyes. It's a little eerie, but whenever you see an old artifact that just has these giant, huge white eyes, now you know most likely where it's from. So yeah, again, I hesitate to like look around and show you things because I don't know how old the pictures are. But it is a massive, huge, sprawling city. Kind of always has been. I mean, the definition of huge, sprawling city has changed over time. But this is definitely the modern definition of huge, sprawling city, isn't it? The Umayyad Mosque, let me just see. I know a lot of these were very sadly damaged, which you would think that they would leave the mosques alone, right? Sadly, not so. Really, the main heart of the citadel was the only place that wasn't damaged during the Civil War recently. Really terrible. But hopefully, like I said, it's all over now. So I'm going to leave it there for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. Next on my channel, we're going to be heading to Egypt. If you want to explore some more old cities with me. Another Alexander-influenced city, if you know what I mean. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. I do hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good